Marty realizes in class that his students are distracted and not paying attention to the lesson. One of them tells him that another massive earthquake has struck California, submerging much of the city underwater. Marty quickly checks the news on his phone, but suddenly the internet goes down everywhere. Soon after, the same catastrophe that happened in California starts unfolding in other major cities around the world. Terrifying tsunamis hit, drowning most coastal cities. Even a volcano erupts in Germany. The internet shuts down completely and stays down for months. Traffic lights stop working and the city becomes paralyzed with massive traffic jams. One day, on his way, Marty spots a strange billboard that reads, "Thanks to Chuck for these 39 years," but he has no idea what it means. Marty's ex-wife, Felicia, is a doctor at a hospital. She and her assistant are the only ones still working there. Felicia is deeply depressed and overcome with emptiness after all that has happened. One night, she calls Marty, and after a long time apart, they end up having a long conversation. Felicia tells him that most of her patients are people who have attempted suicide. Marty, in turn, explains that the school where he used to teach is now empty and no students remain. Marty thinks to himself that, since the world seems to be ending, he should visit Felicia the next day. He prepares dinner and sits in front of the TV, but suddenly the broadcast cuts off. Every channel goes blank, except for a brief glimpse of the same billboard ad about Chuck, before the signal disappears again. The next morning, as Marty heads out for work, he runs into his neighbor Gus, who has returned home on foot without his car. Gus explains that a massive sinkhole opened up in the middle of the city, swallowing about 20 cars. Everyone nearby had to abandon their vehicles and walk back. But that isn't even the worst news. Gus goes on to say that all of California's farmlands were flooded overnight, leaving no food behind. Floods in other regions have wiped out more food supplies as well, meaning no food is being produced anywhere in America anymore. In the middle of Gus's story, Marty notices a woman who works at a bank. He excuses himself and hurries over to ask her about the billboard posted on the bank building. She tells him that Chuck wasn't a bank employee at all. The ad was just mounted on the building and no one actually knows who Chuck is. Everyone who had to walk home looks utterly broken, their faces showing complete hopelessness. Marty goes back to Gus, who tells him that no one is planning on going to work anymore. Everyone is just waiting. Marty doesn't understand what he means. Gus explains, everyone is simply waiting for the end. Nobody believes in the future anymore. At that moment, a small airplane appears in the sky, performing skywriting, and once again, the message is about Chuck. On her way to the hospital, Felicia notices walls covered in graffiti about Chuck. When she arrives, her assistant quickly shows her something strange. All the hospital machines are displaying vital signs even though no patients are hooked up to them. Every single one shows a steady heartbeat of 75. Meanwhile, Marty turns on the TV again, but it seems the entire broadcast system has collapsed. He tries to call Felicia, but suddenly his phone loses signal. Stepping outside, he sees that none of the neighbors' phones are working either. Frustrated, he smashes his phone to the ground and sets out on foot toward Felicia's house on the far side of the city. By the time night falls, he finally reaches her neighborhood. There, he spots a girl named Iris skating alone through the empty streets. Marty tells her he's looking for Felicia. Iris immediately recognizes the name, since Felicia always brought her homemade pastries. In the middle of their conversation, the power goes out and the entire neighborhood plunges into darkness. Moments later, something even stranger happens. Chuck's image appears on every window. Iris rushes to her parents, while Marty runs desperately toward Felicia's home. When Felicia sees him, she's overjoyed. Terrified, Marty tells her about Chuck's face appearing on every window. They head out to the backyard where, in the complete blackout of the city, the entire galaxy is visible in the night sky. Marty points out constellations to her. Felicia spots a planet, but suddenly it vanishes. Then Mars disappears as well. Unfamiliar, eerie sounds echo from the sky as stars and planets begin to go dark, one by one, vanishing from the heavens. This is the end of the world. Marty turns to Felicia and speaks his final words.
I love you.
Years before the end of the world, Chuck worked as a speaker at banking conferences. He always wore a gray suit with a blue tie, trying to look as sharp as possible. Yet, despite his profession, He wasn't doing well emotionally. He could no longer connect with people the way he used to, and it left him lonely and withdrawn. Chuck also had cancer that would kill him within 9 months, though he didn't know it yet. Taylor, a street musician, spots Chuck passing by. To greet him in her own way, she shifts the tempo of her music. At first, Taylor assumes he hasn't noticed, but Chuck does hear the tune and he pauses. He sets his briefcase down and begins to feel the rhythm. Taylor quickly changes the beat and Chuck matches her perfectly. Delighted by his response, Taylor plays something more powerful. Chuck starts dancing in the middle of the street. Slowly, passers-by stop to watch. Chuck forgets everything else and just lets the music take over. From the crowd, he finds a dance partner, Janice. The two of them start dancing together and the crowd cheers them on. They're both incredible, and soon, the street becomes their stage. For Taylor, this is also a great moment. Her performance draws a huge audience and she makes good money that day. Afterward, the three of them walk down to the lake and chat for a while. Taylor is curious why Chuck stopped and started dancing in the first place. What she doesn't know is that Taylor's music had reminded Chuck of his grandmother, who used to dance with him in the kitchen while cooking. But he doesn't share that with them.
I don't know.
Years earlier, Chuck had lost his family in a car accident. After that, he lived with his grandparents, Sarah and Albie. For a year and a half, the house was filled with grief and sorrow. After going through a long period of mourning, Albie turned to alcohol and, of course, his accounting work as a way to forget. Over time, as Chuck grew older, Sarah began to heal too, and together, she and Chuck created many happy memories. Dancing and watching movies became their favorite shared pastime. One night, Chuck came across a door upstairs that led to a dome above the house. But that door was always locked, and his grandfather's one strict rule was that no one was ever allowed inside. Chuck asked Sarah and Albie why the door was locked, but each gave him an excuse. Until one night, when Albie, very drunk, revealed part of the truth. Albie warned him never to enter that room because every one of their descendants who had gone inside had seen the moment of their own death, and from that instant began their long wait for it. Chuck was thrilled by the story and rushed to tell Sarah, but she brushed it off, saying she'd heard it before, and that Chuck shouldn't take Albie's drunken nonsense too seriously. One day, when the school bell rang and Chuck came home, he found out that his grandmother had died of cardiac arrest in a shop. After the funeral, he went back to the shop and asked the shopkeeper to show him the exact place where Sarah had fallen. After losing his family, Chuck now had to bear the pain of losing Sarah too. That night when he returned home, he found Albie asleep at his desk. Chuck took his keys and opened the locked room upstairs. The room was dark, and nothing could be seen. Just then, Albie stormed in angrily and pulled Chuck away from the doorway. Albie himself saw something horrifying inside the room before slamming the door shut. When he realized Chuck hadn't seen anything, he breathed a sigh of relief. The next day, in memory of his grandmother, Chuck joined the school's dance group. Thanks to the dances he had practiced with Sarah, he quickly became one of the best in the class. Over time, he developed feelings for a girl named Kat, who was a few years older than him. Chuck and Kat soon became the class's best dancing pair, and Chuck truly enjoyed dancing with her. Hoping to impress her, he showed her a new dance he had learned. Kat asked him to teach it to her, and that drew them even closer. The school was preparing for a dance event, and Kat invited Chuck to come with her, not as her partner, but as her date. That evening, Albie checked Chuck's math homework. Seeing how good Chuck was at math, he was thrilled. But to Chuck, math was unbearably boring. Albie tried to convince him that everything in the world is built on math, even the steps in a dance follow mathematical patterns. Chuck loved dancing, but Albie insisted that no matter how much he loved it, he could never make a living from it. The best choice was to focus on math and forget about dancing. His grandfather's words devastated Chuck, making him feel as though all his memories with Sarah had been meaningless. At the dance event, when Kat asked him to dance with her, Chuck made an excuse that his leg was injured, but his instructor told him his leg showed no sign of injury and that he should at least be honest with Kat. Chuck stepped outside for some air. After a few minutes of thinking, he made up his mind. He went back into the hall and asked Kat to dance. She had been waiting for this moment. The two of them lit up the entire floor. capturing everyone's attention. Even Felicia and Marty were there. After the performance, the crowd erupted into applause. Kat kissed Chuck on the cheek, sending the audience into cheers. 5 years later, death came for Albie as well. At 17, Chuck was left to carry the weight of life on his own. He inherited the house and for the first time had the chance to uncover the truth behind that mysterious door. He took Albie's keys and entered the room. But the room was nothing more than an empty space with a window, nothing unusual at all. It seemed Sarah had been right. There was nothing mysterious about it. But just as he was about to leave, he heard the steady beeping of a hospital monitor. To his shock, Chuck saw himself lying on a hospital bed, dying. Seconds later, the vision faded and the room was empty again. What terrified him most was that in that vision, he didn't look a day older than 39. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, you know what to do.